There are several uncertainties regarding the future of the Internet access provision industry, two of the main ones being privacy and government control. For the purpose of these scenarios, we've decided to define privacy as the degree of control that a consumer has over their personal information. Government control, however, can be defined as the degree of regulation that governments have over internet service providers. The following scenarios, deglobalization, screens and screens, Datatopia, and Brave New World, are all combinations of these two elements. Deglobalization is a scenario where there is high degrees of government control and high degrees of privacy. A series of court cases in the 2020s concerning consumer privacy and government and organizational control led to consumers gaining absolute control over their data. ISPs are now the only organizations that hold consumer information and as such work closely with governments in order to keep consumer data safe and secure. Due to there being heavy regulation to hold copyright, digital borders are established which increases the difficulty of communicating between nations, thus making communication difficult between other nations and slowing globalization. Digital customs bureaus use computer algorithms to screen for copyrighted content, as well as scanning for incidences of cybercrime. ISPs, as the primary holders of information, are closely controlled by governments. Political unions with standardized rules and regulations develop in order to increase the efficiency of cross-border communication. Australia is a member of the Digital Pan-Pacific Union, which encompasses most of Asia as well as New Zealand. This means Australia is in a prime position to capitalise on the economic expansion in this area. Australia, being a member of this union, is better off than many of the other countries because of its large commodity market. Information trading markets have high values assigned to them, but they are not as dynamic as they were in the past. Growth in the Internet access provision industry is steady but slow. Slow growth in the IoT limits the potential for diversification into the hardware industry, and also international expansion for ISPs is difficult because of the government ties they have. Consumers are averse to using the Internet of Things due to fears of security. They prefer to use secure government servers. Cybercrime doesn't target big business anymore, instead focusing on tricking individuals to hand over information. Cybercrime is also a lot more physical. Stealing hard drives and skimming RFID devices are the most common. Many consumers consider the internet just too expensive and too complicated for them to use. The IoT exists, but in an uninvolved state. IoT is strictly local. 90% of communication occurs through government-run servers instead. This allows governments to monitor information for malicious content. Apart from the provision of internet, other ISP services include data banking and provision of and installation of security. Digital customs bureaus use computer algorithms to screen international data for violations to copyright law. Following are some charts indicating consumer trends. And this is a diagram of what the internet will look like. Different coloured circles represent the different laws in each country, and the arrows between them indicate the connections between them through digital customs bureaus. This is a timeline of events that can be used to understand how the internet got to its current state. The next scenario, Streams and Screens, represents a world where there is no government control and no consumer privacy. The Internet of Things develops, and as a result, information is no longer transmitted through servers. Now that the internet is totally independent from geography, no one government can regulate the internet. As a result, cybercrime dramatically increases and the internet becomes a much more dangerous place. ISPs must adjust to a world where there is decreasing demand for its products. The Internet of Things advances at such a rate that no single government can control the massive amounts of data moving through. The internet is now totally unregulated. The government can no longer protect the public's information safety. Due to pressure from citizens, the government increases expenditure in the ISP industry in order to develop technology to regulate the internet. However, by the early 2030s, this funding begins to dwindle and less people use the internet. Major companies like Lachlan, such as Amazon, shut down, declining profits, resulting in a sharp loss of GDP. With retail being one of Australia's largest industries at the time, the economy goes into recession, which results in funding cuts to the ISP industry. Consumer confidence lowers and consumers start reducing purchases of luxury products such as streaming services and devices. This results in reduced revenue for the industry. Transferring money through the internet will be dangerous and cannot be protected, which may harm companies that use the internet for SCM. Cybercrimes will become more serious and harder to detect, and consumers will only connect locally as a result by establishing local area networks. The Internet of Things thrived in the early 2020s, however there are no longer enough connected devices for it to remain effective over long distances. The ISP industry stops developing new technology for the Internet due to low demand, and profit margins will decline as the infrastructure ages and maintenance costs increase. Due to there being less users, networking effects will be much lower and device sales will reduce. The diagram at the bottom depicts an internet that is not bound by geography. However, communication between countries is still low. Which arguments lead to what the internet turns into in 2035. The next scenario is Datatopia. This is a scenario where there is very high amounts of privacy, but very low amounts of government control. Improvements to peer-to-peer connectivity made through the Internet of Things are a reality, and communication no longer takes place through servers, thus removing the possibility for government control. There are more devices connected now than ever, which creates more products for ISPs to market, but more costs in the form of upkeep costs. Consumers have absolute privacy over all of their information, and businesses can gain access to limitless amounts of anonymous analytical data for market research. However, while this lack of regulation has created a highly connected and borderless world, cybercrime is still at large, and this has devastating social and economic impact. Governments lost direct control of data and the internet when communication stopped taking place via servers. It becomes impossible to impose regulation on peers. The United Federation of Electronic Security, established in 2029, is a United Nations-like organization that gathers data on cybercriminal organizations and gives this data to national police forces. Governments can no longer restrict what websites consumers use. Data is so abundant that it has lost almost all of its value. There are no longer any data trading companies, and everyone has access to analytical information. The majority of machines and factories are connected by the Internet of Things, which leads to higher productivity and lower costs. Worldwide recessions occur due to the collapse of the film, literature, and art industries due to large-scale private piracy. Thousands lose work, and there is a reduced demand for internet service provision products. Despite having more privacy, people often choose not to take advantage of it, as it increases functionality of the Internet of Things. Personal information such as financial details are kept in unhackable digital safes. Consumers become oversaturated with technology, and many people try to limit the amount of devices they have. By 2035, sales of devices begin to flatten. Piracy is the main form of cybercrime. People become far less creative, as whatever they create is liable to be stolen. In the 2020s, ISPs begin marketing a range of products, ranging from smart house operating systems to the installation of biotechnologies and augmentations. In the 2030s, however, growth has slowed significantly due to recession and oversaturation. Here is the event timeline that describes how the internet becomes what it is. And these are the graphs that represent cybercrime and the number of connected devices. Notice that the diagram is similar to what is seen as screens and screens. However, there are a lot more arrows representing a lot more communication. The final scenario, Brave New World, depicts a world where there is no privacy but very high government control. Consumer information is a valuable commodity which is collected by governments and sold to businesses. ISPs are the main collectors of this data, and therefore there is a lot of regulation in place to keep this data secure. However, with government backing, the internet develops into a very personalized service, as personal data is free to be traded between companies. In this scenario, the government makes laws against identity theft. ISPs are the primary collectors of consumer data, and they are strictly regulated by the government. As a result, they must submit quarterly reports and must consult the government before making any major decision. A global alliance of governments, known as the GISS, has been established to prevent cybercrime. High incidences of cybercrime in the 2020s mean that consumer confidence in this period was low and device sales dropped. However, the formation of the GISS has been met with sharp reduction in cybercrime, and consumer confidence is at an all-time high. The economy is in a boom. Demand for ISP services are also at an all-time high. vast majority of consumers are aware that data is being collected on them, but very few of them actually care. This attitude has been strengthened by the formation of the GISS. Consumers rely on technology to make the majority of decisions in their life. The Internet of Things is reasonably well developed. There is still the need for government servers, so the Internet is not fully international. Peer-to-peer connections are encouraged by the government as they are very good at generating information. There is so much available data that the search engines now function as artificial intelligence, being able to suggest things based on a consumer's individual tastes and patterns. Here are some charts that depict the cybercrime and the number of devices. There's a sharp drop of cybercrime due to the formation of the GISS, and as can be seen, consumer confidence is slowly rising. Thank you very much for your attention.